So the other day I was rewatching my favorite movie of all time, The Shining, and it got me thinking. Jack Nicholson might be the greatest actor of all time. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, James, what a hot take. But for real, he's been in some of the most revered movies in history as the main or one of the main characters. His career has spanned decades with little to no sign of his skills slowing down during this 40 plus year stretch, and he's been awarded some of the highest honors in film. But what really makes him one of the best? We have your common answers of Tom Hanks, Denzel, Leonardo, Daniel Day-Lewis, and they are all deserving of this title because of their wide range of characters that they are able to portray at such a high level. They convince you that they are that person, and I would argue that is what makes a great actor. The ability to transform into the person on screen. But with actors like Nicholson or even Samuel L. Jackson, it feels like they are just playing themselves in every movie they are in. So what's really more compelling? Playing a character or playing yourself? Jack has been in almost every type of movie from dramatic to comedy, romantic comedy, horror, war movies, and even superhero movies. But none of these roles feel that different from the last. They are all equal parts intense, charming, and animated. He has the type of look and presence that is instantly recognizable, almost like he was made for Hollywood. We got the signature smile, his animated eyebrows, the same damn pair of sunglasses he always wears, and his extremely sharp and intense stare. When he enters on screen, he commands your attention. It goes from I'm watching this movie to, oh my god, it's Jack Nicholson. So today I want to look at three specific performances. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, and then his portrayal of the Joker in the 1989 Batman film. Three roles that story-wise are different, but they all feel like different versions of each other. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it almost feels like he's just playing himself. The first half of the movie is deciding whether or not he's actually crazy, or if he's just putting on a show to get out of his work and the daily 9 to 5 schedule. And this is precisely the dilemma people seem to have with his persona. Is he always acting like this intense, high-energy character, or is that just who he really is? On the surface, McMurphy is a character you shouldn't really root for or like. He's not only a criminal with some pretty awful charges, but the second he enters the facility, he instantly starts stirring things up. He constantly manipulates the other members, disrespects the staff, and overall is a nuisance to what should be a calming environment. But he commands your attention. He's a natural leader, and halfway through the film, it feels like he's running the show. Because of his confidence and demeanor, you're forced to almost trust him to some extent. He has this aura about him that makes you believe he is right or that he would lead you in the right direction, a very common theme in a lot of his work. And as his character starts to unravel, you start to kind of feel bad for him and then root for his success, which is very similar to his role in The Shining. Not only is his character named Jack, he has this same back and forth from deranged killer to someone being manipulated by outside forces. His natural charm and commanding presence lets you know from the beginning that this is his movie and we are seeing the events from his perspective. And as his character descends into madness, there's still this feeling that you should trust him. And this is seen most with his wife and child who stick by his side until he is way too far gone. But again, because of his character's name and the fact that he is still acting just like his previous roles, it feels like we are just watching Jack Nicholson, not Jack Torrance. If Cuckoo's Nest was the crazy version of him, this is like the mad scary version of the same character. And then we get his most animated character I think he's ever done, and a perfect match for his style of humor and control. His portrayal of the Joker, coincidentally named Jack Napier. Even though this might not be the best version of the infamous Batman villain, Jack's version feels like the most fun and similar to the comic book. Before turning into the psychopathic killer, he was someone who just wanted power and attention. He didn't have the control until he took matters into his own hands. But just like the previous two roles that I brought up, he is troubled enough to where part of you, even if it's a small part, kind of feels bad for him. His biggest insecurity is his appearance, and after being thrown into the vat of acid, this insecurity was heightened even more. He even says in the movie that all he wants is to be on the dollar bill, and through trying to be a quote-unquote artist, we can tell that all he really wants is to be seen. He despises Batman for creating the man he is, but more so for all the attention that he gets instead in the media. With so many different versions of the Joker, an actor who some would think would be past his prime because he was in his 50s added a whole new side to the character and excelled in one of the hardest positions to be in, opposite Batman. And he did this with some of the best on screen charisma that we've ever seen. All of these characters feel like the same person, but with different backgrounds. They are manipulated by outside forces and are created into these crazy yet charming, intense, and commanding personas. You could swap McMurphy with Jack Torrance and still get the same movie. You could put either of them into the role of Jack Napier and still get a similar version of the Joker. They can be evil, but they can also be trustworthy, hence why they are able to control and manipulate so many people in the movie. All of these similar qualities and characteristics, especially from the Joker, combined into what I believe is his most intense and craziest role, and quite possibly his best performance. Frank Costello in The Departed. In a movie filled with some of the greatest actors of all time, Matt Damon, Leo, Alec Baldwin, and Mark Wahlberg, Jack Nicholson somehow stands out above the rest. His character of Frank Costello is easily the most evil character that he has ever portrayed, but it is the best example of his greatest quality as an actor, commanding the attention of the audience. The movie itself is a perfect representation of the thin line between good and evil. You're supposed to root for one character even though they're involved in terrible crimes. You never know who is really corrupt and who's working for the good guys. And at the center of it all, you have Frank Costello. The role was originally pitched to Robert De Niro, but I can't imagine anyone else playing this role besides Nicholson because no one can walk that fine line of good and evil like he can. And no one can be this animated while not coming across as corny or over the top. Unlike his other characters, there is no room to feel bad for him. He is not a troubled person, but simply a downright bad person. But as we find out later in the film, he was being manipulated the entire time as well. Now yes, he is clearly taking some liberties and is even relishing in his position as the kingpin of the organized crime in Boston, but he was put into this position by an even larger and more evil organization. The end of the film leaves you questioning if this is who he really was, or was he just playing a persona? Jack Nicholson is one of the greatest actors of all time based on merit and performance alone, but what separates him from other method and wide variety actors is it feels like he's just being an exaggerated form of himself on screen. No one else can play the individual roles he's been in, but you could swap out his roles with other roles he's taken, and it would be almost as compelling. So many films are driven by the writing, so all you really need is a good enough actor to make sure the lines and dialogue come off how the director intended. But with Jack Nicholson films, it feels like the movies are written around his persona. Yes, there are plenty of different roles of the Joker, but no one else could play Jack Napier. There's plenty of roles of being descended into madness, but no one can be as commanding and layered as Jack Torrance. No one else can walk onto set and just be McMurphy, equal parts charming and deceptive. And if anyone else tried to be Frank Costello, they would come across as too over the top or not eccentric enough. Acting is never easy and no one could ever claim that it is. But for Jack Nicholson, all he has to do is show up and the movie writes itself. His natural talent and on-screen presence is one of a kind and so many have tried to replicate it or outperform it, but no one can command an audience like he can. When you're just playing yourself or different versions of yourself, no one questions who you are portraying. Jack Nicholson is the greatest actor of all time because he was never really acting in the first place.